So with this, I would like to welcome Dr. Seema Nath, who would be moderating today's session. Welcome, Seema.
Thank you, Sharmishta.
Yeah.
Looking forward.
So Dr. Seema is currently the Associate Director, School Service at Umeed Child Development Center, Mumbai. She is also a visiting faculty at the Azim Premji University for the postgraduate diploma in inclusive education. So with this, I would request Seema to take the session ahead. Over to you, Seema.
Thank you so much. And it gives me immense pleasure today to introduce you to our panelists. But before I introduce you to the panelists, I thought we should get acquainted to each other as the audience. So I have put a question on Mentimeter. It's on your chats. I would request you all to click on the link and you can share a little bit more about yourself. So I'll just take 1 minute to share this so that all of you know who's joining us and what roles you play in the school space. So I have reshared the link on the chat, and if you're unable to use the chat, you can also go to www.menti.com and use the code that is seen on your screen, which is 36660628. 36660628. So it's really heartening. So this is a word cloud, and I see that most of the people joining us today are teachers, educators, special educators. We also have caregivers, counselors, program coordinators, program managers, ECD folks. We have psychotherapists and so many people working in the child development space, in the NGO space. So a massive welcome to all of you, and do keep filling this and letting us know more about you. And while you tell us more about yourself, let me now introduce to you our panelist for today. First, we have with us Dr. Preeti Mathur, who is an RCI certified psychologist with 28 plus years of experience and specializes in adolescent and family counseling. She has collaborated with global organizations like UNICEF and leads counseling and special education at DPS Bangalore North, championing mental health, inclusive education, and emotional well-being through her compassionate and strategic approach. Today we have with us Tezim Rasool, an adult on the autism spectrum, who is also a self-advocate who strongly supports inclusion of all individuals in all aspects of life. He has been actively involved in spreading awareness and promoting acceptance amongst families and communities of individuals on the spectrum. Currently, he is working with the school services at Umeed Childhood Development Center. Before this, he had completed a 2-year fellowship program aimed at promoting inclusion in mainstream schools called the Umeed Inclusion Fellowship Program. Mr. has already introduced me, but there is one more person from Azim Premji University that I am very happy to introduce, who is Dr. Ankur Madan, who is the director of the School of Education at the Azim Premji University in the Bangalore campus. She teaches courses in child development and inclusive education in the master's program in education and ECCE. She also anchors the PG diploma programs in ECE, inclusive education, and teaching children with learning disability. Through her research and writing, she has explored the concept of inclusive education from various facets. Her specialized interests are in developing a contextualized understanding of inclusive education and exploring childhood studies in India. I would like to welcome all our panelists today and thank you all so much for being here. And with that, let's get started on today's session and talk a little bit more about certain things that all of us have been thinking about, have been probably been there somewhere at the back of your minds, and you want to know a little bit more. And thank you so much for the overwhelming response to this webinar. So let's talk about why we are all here. Let me take you into a classroom that I visited. It was a typical government school in Mumbai, bursting at the seams. The walls were colorful, the teacher was passionate, and the room was full of children. And every child had a spark. There was one child in the class who rarely spoke and was just sitting separately from the others, while the rest of the class copied from the board. This child was arranging his pencils in perfect color gradients. Like, it was just beautiful to see. And later, when I was talking to the teacher, she said, yeah, I have a few children in my class who are slow. You might have seen the child who's sitting separately. He's in a world of his own. And also hinted that maybe I'm talking to the parents that maybe needs to move to another school. So, this is the reality in a lot of classrooms where we see something like this happening. And because this happens, today I want to talk to you all about a little bit more about what can we do about this. What does inclusion mean for children when we start thinking about them being different, or maybe a slow learner, or something very, very different from the others? So maybe I'll get started with you, Tezim, to ask you, could you share a little bit? You said you are an adult on the autism spectrum. Can you share a little bit of your experience as a student in school? I know school experience must have been a while ago, but it would be really nice to hear from you about your school experience and what do you understand by the term neurodiversity. Have you come across that term? What does it mean? And when did you get to know about it?
Thank you so much, Seema. I think start with my experiences, my school experiences. When I was in school, I was a while back. So at that point of time, there was no awareness about neurodiversity or autism, what it is and how it looks like in classrooms or students. So most of the times I as a student was labeled as a shy student who does not want to talk or who always tries to hide in the corner back seat of the classroom, and most of the times is not completed his homework, and his writing is pretty bad, and is a lazy student who can do a lot more but is not trying hard enough. So I think those were some of the labels my teachers would give me when I was a child. And but I think today a lot of children like me are there in the classrooms, and the term neurodiversity I came to know about when I was learning more about autism and what uh, how different needs of students can look like in classroom. It actually started with the autistic community using this term. It was started by a researcher, and the researcher used it in her research, and then autistic community started using it. It's not a medical or a scientific term which anybody will be diagnosed with, "Okay, this person is neurodiverse." It's an umbrella term which means कि any person who experiences the world differently uh, can fall under the umbrella term of neurodiversity. It started with autistic community, but it has now expanded to a lot of other. It includes a lot of other conditions as well, which may include ADHD, learning disabilities, and other neurological and developmental conditions. And yeah, and all of these conditions come under the umbrella term of neurodiversity today.
Thank you, Tezim, for sharing that and for providing us a overview of trying to understand. So let's explore this a little bit further. Ankur, I want to pose a question to you. What does curriculum or pedagogy that includes neurodiversity, where there's an understanding of neurodiversity, what does that look like?
Thank you so much, Seema, and it's really wonderful to have so many people attending this webinar on a topic like this. So it's very heartening that there is so much interest in this domain now. So, and thank you for the question. I think what I would like to begin by saying is that a curriculum that supports neurodiversity also incorporates or also looks at principles of child development or developmental science, as we call it. And I think that looking at both of them together would perhaps be a little helpful. So if it is okay with you, I'll begin with that and then go on to neurodiversity. Yeah.
Absolutely. Please
Yeah.
do.
So, see, I could perhaps begin by giving a concrete example of something that, we saw that a lot of people who are part of this webinar are teachers and may be familiar with this, that our new national education policy in 2020 talked about different stages of school education, right? It organized school education into this formula, which I think now is quite well known, the 5+3+3+4 formula, where the first stage is the foundational stage and preparatory and so on and so forth. Now, always our curriculum has been organized in this manner, meaning that we have always understood that what is appropriate for children's learning or what should be taught to them is based on the developmental stages that they belong to, right? And these developmental stages are determined on the basis of lots and lots of almost now classical theories of child development that we've had, which have helped us to understand that there are certain developmental norms, as we call them, which seem to have universal principles, which seem to have uniformity in giving us an insight as to what is appropriate for children's learning at what stage of their development. And not just learning, but also how they develop, grow, and mature through or with respect to different domains of development. And this includes the physical domain, the cognitive domain, the social and emotional domain. Cognitive domain essentially here is about learning and thinking, right? So that is how we have always understood education, we have always organized. And the other concrete example of this is how the NEP has led the development of the National Curriculum Framework, another document that a lot of teachers may have, seen or come across, which gives us as to what should be taught, what content, what knowledge, what skills, what dispositions are appropriate to learn at what stage in one's school life or learning, or of course, even later. Now, however, having said that, because this seems like a well evidenced way of organizing learning and teaching and curriculum, right? Because it has implications for what we teach and also how we teach. So, pedagogy and curriculum are both organized. Keeping this in mind, one would think that then what is the difficulty? Then you can teach the same thing to everyone because, anyways, all your class 3 students are at a certain developmental stage, your class 10 students are at a certain developmental stage. Why should there even be a challenge in organizing teaching and learning or classroom experiences, as Tazim was earlier sharing about, how perhaps his learning experience are different or have been different from those of other children. Now, that is exactly where neurodiversity comes in. So, while child development tells us that there are developmental norms and there is something that is universal about how teaching, learning, or experiences that children have with respect to their development and learning and growth at a certain stage of development, there are also individual differences which need to be acknowledged in every classroom. And that is very much a part of the diversity of human condition. It is what it is. It is not something that is exceptional. There is nothing exceptional about that. And it is not necessarily a diversity that comes only when you admit children with identified disabilities or with labels that one can give to children. That diversity automatically comes in, and it comes from environmental factors, it can come from biological factors, it can come from series many different aspects of one's living condition, and that therefore requires to be addressed. And hence, a classroom where a teacher is dealing with or has children of any kind, it doesn't matter where what that cross section is or where they come from, what kind of backgrounds they come from, etc., is a diverse classroom. And the heterogeneity, therefore, of a classroom is something that needs to be acknowledged. And neurodiversity, where we talk about ADHD or learning disabilities or the autism spectrum, are some of that diversity that have been identified and must therefore be acknowledged. A classroom or a curriculum, sorry for my apologies for a long answer, but a classroom with such kind of diversity therefore requires attention to be paid to those individual differences, and that attention to individual differences does require some amount of adaptations, modifications, differentiations that teachers need to bring about in their everyday interactions with children. And it does not necessarily have to be something that is radically different from what they do in their everyday classroom practice. It does not have to be. So this whole idea of special education brings in loads that term, the idea that there must be something which is over and above, which must be really special, or is a specialized kind of knowledge that only some people possess. There is specialization there. Certainly, it's not everyday practice. You do require it. But it is not something that we as teachers, a good teacher, a sensitive teacher who wants to improve the overall experience of learning for all the children in her classroom, is actually already practicing adaptation, modification, differentiation in her everyday interactions with children. So therefore, a teacher which brings in flexibility in how she presents curriculum to children, in how she engages with children, the amount of support and scaffolding that she provides to children, is a teacher who is doing that for not just those children who she may have identified or may not have identified as being neurodiverse, but knows that there are individual differences in the children in her classroom. So classroom that is or a curriculum with children with neurodiversity is a classroom that is sensitive to individual differences of all the children in the classroom, that tries to enhance the teaching learning experience of all the children in the classroom, but is extremely sensitive to the fact that there are individual differences, that some children may learn differently, and therefore I need to provide content differently. I need to provide them with opportunities to present their learning different, demonstrate their learning differently, and I need to adapt my pedagogical practices differently. Yeah, I'll stop there for now. Sorry for the long answer.
No, thank you so much for bringing in so many illustrations and examples of what it might look like in the classroom and how do we understand, and specifically the whole role of an educator and being considerate of individual differences when talking about curriculum and pedagogy, and bringing together the lens of child development and neurodiversity. I will move to Preeti to ask you a question because you come from the school background. So I'll ask you, and also you mentioned you're an RCI certified professional, you have been working in this space for 28 plus years. So, in your experience of working with schools, how do you think that schools can move past a very deficit or medicalized view of neurodiversity or even disabilities for that matter? How do we move from this medical view and seeing people as different and maybe not included in the same classroom? So, would
Thank
really
you.
like to hear.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Uncle Ma'am, for giving me the opportunity to be part of this webinar and share my experiences with you all. So, thank you so much. And coming back to question asked by Seema, when we see moving from past a deficit based on medicalized view of neurodiversity in school, I think we require a fundamental shift in mindset, system, and practices. From focusing on what students lack to recognize the value of cognitive differences and promoting inclusive environment for them. So when we talk about fundamental shift from mindset, I think I will quote what Taizim said, it's a umbrella term called neurodiversity. And I think we all have to adopt that neurodiversity paradigm now. Because we have to start talking about differences, individual differences, rather than talking about pathology. Because when we talk about inclusion, we have to include everyone, irrespective of their abilities or disabilities or race, caste, religion, and everything. So I think we have to focus more on differences. And I think neurodivergence we can reframe as a part of natural human variation rather than a set of disorder to be fixed or with the help of special education or something like that. So when we have to adopt these children inside the school, I think that adaptation of neurodiversity paradigm is very much required. We should have a strength-based approach. As Ankur said, individual differences are there. Everyone learn in their own way. So I think it's very much important that we know the individual's learning profile, whether the child is visual learner or kinesthetic learner or auditory learner. And when the teachers are making the plans for the students, I think they have to focus on individuals' learning profiles. And they have to focus on what children can do and how they can learn best. What they cannot do, they don't have to focus on that, but they have to find out the ways what students can do and how they learn best. I can give example. There are some students who are very musical in their thing. So if the concept is taught in a musical way, in a rhyming way, they learn very fast. And I think everyone will agree with me that ABCD is taught to us in a very rhythmic way. We all remember. But when it comes to other languages, if I talk about Hindi, तो वो सबको पता नहीं याद है या नहीं है. So I think that is very important. We have to teach them the way they want to learn instead of telling them this is the way you have to learn the thing. And for that, I think NEP talks about UDL and other things, and I think that flexible teaching method and UDL is actually a very, very good tool which offers multiple means of engagement, representation, and expression. So I think if we as a teachers use UDL in our teaching, I think we can make a major difference in our classroom setting, involvement, and definitely the class will be more engaged, more representative, and more expressions will come out. I think when we use UDL in our this thing, actually, one more thing which is very much important is we have to encourage teachers on reflective practices also, because I know that when we are talking, it's very easy, but when they are practicing, sometimes they feel it is very difficult. But I want to tell you in our school, We are talking to the teachers on regular basis when we are supporting the teacher education and trying to shift their mindset. And for that, we are doing online training. Just
Thank you so much for sharing those very useful ways of changing and shifting mindsets and how that is fundamental to understanding and embracing neurodiversity in the classroom. And this makes me think back to the student that I had recently interacted with, and sometimes we think of it as a lack of intelligence or not learning or lack of interest in learning, etc. But oftentimes it's just that they are used to expressing differently. And somebody in the chat has said about inclusion can't be an afterthought, and absolutely. We have to think of inclusion right at the beginning. There's never It's never too late to think about inclusion, but also it is, from hearing all of you speak, it reminds me of the fact that we all look at children through a very narrow lens of academic performance and behavioral conformity. And thus we really miss out what they really are, who they really are. And from listening to all of you, like Ankur said, there are individual differences. We need to adapt, modify, differentiate. However, it's not something different and out of the way. And it was also really interesting to hear about the role of special educators and classroom teachers. Classroom teachers are the experts of what they do, and the role of a special educator comes with its own knowledge and skills. So they're complementary roles. They don't take away from each other. It's not, but together they are magic. They can make so much happen for students in the classroom. And hearing from you, Tezim, talking about neurodiversity and how it's an umbrella term, I think I would like to carry the discussion a little ahead on thinking a little bit more about this. And Preeti, because you were talking about this as well, can I just come back to you to pick at that same thread? That we often see that because of class size or because of the way schools are, oftentimes teachers may resist having children with different needs. And it can be because of various reasons. These are legitimate issues like classroom size, overwhelming workload. There are so many things even every teacher is doing in the classroom. How do you think we should start addressing some of these very real concerns that teachers have?
I agree with you, Seema. This is very real and common concern, and it should be addressed with empathy and practical support. And we have to develop or build a teacher support system in our school. And this is what we are doing at DPS Bangalore North. And the concern about workload is valid and must be acknowledged, not dismissed, because now the workload is 24/7. Previously, it was considered, the teaching job is considered as the school, when we are going to school, we are coming back and everything is done. But now it become a 24/7 job. And so if the workload is there, then it should be acknowledged. And teachers are already stressed, and inclusion should not be feel like one more thing added to their responsibility. So I think the schools must openly recognize this and avoid framing inclusion as an added burden to the teachers. For that, it is required that provide a systemic support about inclusion, not individual support. So I'm talking about this systemic support because if it is in a system, then it will be a very easy thing for the teachers and the other stakeholders in the school to adapt to the inclusion policies and all those things. And inclusion shouldn't rely solely on a goodwill or extra efforts of an individual teacher. So schools must provide structural support such as co-teaching model, general and special educators working together, or shadow teachers, or remedial teachers along in the class, or some if we have a clear referral pathways also for additional help. I think that system if a school has a policy or a system in the place, I think inclusion is very much possible in the class. And I think teachers are in the schools because of NEP or CBSE has made it mandatory for the teachers to attend 50 hours training programs. So I think when they are using the trainings and all those things, they are just randomly whatever is coming, they are investing on that. But I think when a school has a systemic plan, they invest in practical, time-saving professional development programs, which offers relevant, hand-on, and directly applicable things to the teachers. Because teachers also need a helping hand because they are not aware how to help these kids. All kids are different in the class. All 40 are different in the class. So how to make a plan which can apply to all of them? I'm not talking about, so if we are talking about neurodiversity or then I think the teacher has to invest their skill building programs on that. And one more thing, as a school or as a special educator or as a rehab psychologist, if we are working with any school, I think we have to share some time efficient tools or templates with the teachers so that now it will be easy for them to help when to ask help, when to provide what type of support is to be provided to the child or to the teacher or to the parent or anyone. So if the templates are given or tools are given to the teachers, then it becomes very easy for them to plan differentiated lesson plans or scaffold worksheets or classroom routines and everything. So I think for making inclusion part of whole school planning, inclusion must be embedded in school culture, policies, and schedules from leadership to down. I cannot say that only one person is responsible for it. Each and everyone has to take the responsibility of that. Then only it will be possible. Otherwise, the inclusion is not at all feasible.
Thank you so much for sharing that perspective because I was thinking about it. Teachers are often the first adults outside the family to notice that there's something different about a child. And if they don't have a strong grasp of how children are developing physically, emotionally, cognitively, they may often misread some of these signs. And that is what ends up labeling a child. Sometimes it is like a child who cannot see, sit in one place for too long. They're just called naughty, like walking around, running around. Or sometimes if a child has a meltdown in the classroom, they're often thought as a troublemaker, that they're trying to gain attention or something like that. And that's why what you just said about teachers being knowledgeable and supported and it being systemic, like one individual, of course, it shouldn't be like one individual who should be made responsible, but like how do we make the system more responsive to make inclusion happen? And that makes me reflect on this, and maybe Tazima, I'll ask you this. How do we make for a system to be so inclusive, and we're just talking about supporting teachers, so how do we support teachers and students, and how do we create like a safe environment for probably both of them, not just children but for both teachers and students?
Yeah, I think it's very important, like Preeti also shared. It should not be like a burden on a teacher. Now you have to be inclusive, and there are these four of maybe two students in your classroom which you have to include. I think inclusion is not only for children with any disability or any specific needs in the classroom, but it is for all the students in the classroom. So if we are to looking at creating a safe space for both the teacher and the students, it should be for all the people in the classroom. The classroom should, or the school should be a safe space for both the students and the teachers. And how that can be created is, I am a believer of love and care and compassion for everybody in the school. So how can teachers have those spaces where they support each other, in the work that they have, and have similar spaces for students. How much of student voice is visible in the schools spaces, in the classroom spaces, in the curriculum, in their timetable, in whatever they do. How much of student voice are we advocating for, and keeping that there in our schools. I think that is a great way of understanding how much of safe space the school is for the students and for the teachers. So yeah, whatever is happening in the school, how much of collaboration work is happening, and what students want to do. Like, for example, if students want to have spaces of art, or maybe in lunchtime what they want to do, or how they want to do, use a buddy system, or peer buddy system. And here I think hearing from students gives you the greatest ideas, and also making sure ki, all the students are um, sharing and sharing their opinions and ideas. That is a measurement of how safe a student is feeling in the classrooms. And uh, yeah.
Thank you, Tezim, for sharing a lot of different ways in which we can create a safe environment for students and teachers both. Maybe I think, Ankur, I'll also move to you, because you have your background in childhood studies. And what does that tell you about creating emotionally safe spaces? Because physically, we know there is a lot of emphasis on that, but there is also the need for emotionally safe spaces for students in schools and classrooms. So what can we do for that? What does it look like?
Yeah, so I think what child development or developmental science fundamentally teaches us that the social, emotional, just like cognitive needs are different for children at different stages of their development, right? So therefore, the fulfillment of those needs, or how do you ensure that children feel safe emotionally, physically, cognitively in those environments, should be determined by the stage of development at which they are, right? And Tezin talked about love, care, and nurturance. And I think when children are very young, those should really be central to our engagement and interaction with young children, right? So the entire curriculum and pedagogical practices that one provides to children, or rather learning experiences and learning environment that one creates in a classroom for young children, should centralize, or should really prioritize this essence of love, care, and nurturance in our classroom. So even if children, or rather when we use, we talk a lot about practices like play-based learning and exploration for young children. Absolutely, those are very, very essential practices. But how does one ensure that children feel safe to explore, safe to play, and be nurtured in the classroom? So, care, nurturance, and love are all very important aspects of care of creating that safe, inclusive learning environment for young children. However, as children grow older, those needs also change, right? Because their social and emotional development is also maturing, is also growing and changing. So, hence, the classroom interactions practices also should adapt themselves to fulfill those needs. So let's take the other extreme example of adolescence, right? So when children are much older, I'm talking about children who are 13, 14, 15, up to 18 years of age in school. At that point of time, their social emotional needs are so different from what perhaps it was even 4 years or 3 years prior to that, that the kind of learning environments that you need to create for them, where every child feels safe and nurtured, and those emotional needs, particularly for children who are neurodivergent because they're extremely vulnerable. They are extremely vulnerable. They may have gone through lots and lots of unpleasant experiences with bullying, with being isolated, being segregated, being constantly judged and told that they are, not good enough, and so on and so forth. So the high on vulnerability, extremely low on self-esteem, trying to form an identity of their own, trying to find themselves in the world. Also changing relationships with parents, for example, right? When you are 14, 15, you begin to distance yourself from your parents and you try to find yourself in your peers, you try to develop interest, you want to, explore different kinds of vocations, your interest in things like love and exploring sexuality. All of these are bursting. Needless to say that your physical body is undergoing so much change and you don't even necessarily understand what's happening to you. So who is then the person, or who are the people that they go to for information? And in the world that we live, which is exploding with information of all kinds, it's not very easy to sort the fact from fiction, right? So and also the fact that because we are isolating ourselves so much, children these days are not really interacting with families, grandparents, parents, even the peer groups, as much as the kind of time that they are spending on their devices, need that kind of anchors, need those safety anchors. And I think that there is a lot of value in providing those experiences within the classroom, where teachers do not necessarily judge children all the time, allow them, as Tazim shared, allowing children to find their own voice and expression, even if they are wrong. So you ask a question, but never mind if it's a silly question. Say something, but that's not necessarily, the right answer to everything. So I think, I mean, lastly, what I want to say is that I completely agree with this point that all of this has to be at a systemic level. A lot of things can happen in the classroom. Teachers can do a lot of things in their classrooms, in their daily practice, but it does require systemic support. It does require collaboration, and inclusion is a process. You can't reach from one end to the other in one day. I mean, you may have exceptionally good intentions, but it takes a while, even to create these safe learning environments, to constantly reassure children that the environment that you are in is actually safe, where your expression and where your being is not constantly challenged, takes a while. And if one has those intentions and the support to do that, and as Preeti shared, that there are many ways of doing that. You don't have to feel alone. Teachers are not superhumans. They are not superhumans, and they should not be considered. And all of that can be enabled, provided that entire school works together to create those safe environments. Yeah, stop there.
Thank you, Ankur, and also Tezim, for trying to help us understand what a safe environment can look like for teachers and students. And we often think it's only for one category of people, like either we're thinking about children, but the fact that it should be for both children and educators, it's an important takeaway for me. And another thing that I just thought what you were talking about, that we shouldn't think of a teacher as a superhero who's supposed to do everything. We need to create, and goes back to what Preeti, you were sharing about the structures and doing it in a systemic manner. Ankur, you were talking about how you need to enable the teacher also to look at the child differently as per their age, have different ways of engaging with the child. And Tezim, you shared about the fact that, ask the child what works for them. Like sometimes we don't think about such a simple solution, that maybe I'll just ask the child what is working for them, rather than, trying to rack my own faculties, think very hard, what should I do? What is, like, it's just simple, ask the child what works. And that brings me to another question, and I just saw this on chat as well. So Preeti, I'll again redirect to you because you work closely with parents and caregivers. And I think somebody else in the audience also had a similar question like me that I was thinking about. Teachers that I have interacted with have often told me that parents are resistant to accepting that their childs have need, or they often see it as a barrier that, if we go for anything, if something happens, then maybe I will be misjudged, my child will be misjudged. There's also that fear. And I guess a lot of it is also cultural, it is historic, the way we see differences and disabilities. So, in your experience, what can we do to bridge this communication gap? Because I've also heard parents, on the other hand, saying that teachers are not cooperative, teachers are not helpful. So, both seem to have this idea, but how do we then bridge this gap? Because both want to work, they are very much on the same page in terms of wanting to help the child, but often there seems to be some kind of communication gap between them. How do we address some of these things?
It's a very good question. And it's a very sensitive issue, also complex and sensitive issue, because it is deep rooted, as you said. It is a cultural perception. Some stigmas are also related, and sometimes trust is also a big factor in creating a gap between the parent and the school. Actually, first we have to understand why parents resist to acknowledge the child's neurodivergent needs. Actually, we have to understand if they are not acknowledging the child's need, then they are delaying the vital support which is given to the child as early as possible. We focus on early intervention and other things. But we have to also understand that this resistance is often based on some fear or some misinformation, sometimes lack of understanding, sometimes guilt is there because of me, the child is like that. Sometimes they are in denial phase. No, I was like that. That's why my child is behaving like this. And sometimes they have a mistrust on the institutions also. Or their previous experiences are negative experiences are like that. Then they try to hide the thing. So in our school, when the children are coming for, I'm going to give my example, my school's example. When the children are coming to our school, most of the time, the children with some specific needs or some need some type of accommodation or exemptions or all those things, when they are coming, they are just hiding. They're hiding the thing. And what we are doing is, first we try to build the trust by raising the concern. And we don't start with the problem. We talk about the positive things, and then we said, how you are dealing with this, because we see that the child is a little bit restless. So how you are dealing with the child at home. So when there is a trust built between the parent and then they open up and they share their ideas, and we then confirm that it is a collaborative effort. Only school cannot do everything, and only parents cannot do it. It should be a hand-holding, proper hand-holding is required. So when we are approaching to the parents, we are approaching to them not with sympathy, we are approaching them with empathy and not with urgency. We know that every child is different, and I think we have to accept that individual differences. We usually frame our questions like curiosity, with curiosity, not as a conclusion. I feel that how you are doing this, how you are managing this, you are super. Sometimes we have to do that. And we have seen that it really works. When you talk to the parents, give them support. I am not saying physical support we are giving. We are giving emotional support that I understand what you are doing. So empathy is very much required. And we use very simple and non-technical language in that way. We are not labeling any child. We are not saying that your child is autistic or your child is having ADHD or learning disability or something like that. We usually use simple, non-technical language and always explain them clearly and compassionately that this is what we are facing in the class, how you can help us. And that actually help a lot us. And as Tazim and Ankur ma'am said that we have created some safe spaces for dialogues where we are in our school, we have a team of counselors and who are not only supporting children, we are supporting teachers also, we are supporting the other staff or members also, and we are supporting parents also. Because parents also need a outlet to share their experiences. Sometimes then they just need an outlet. So we have to create those safe spaces. We have identified some peer educators also. We trained them in mental health first aid. So they are talking to the group of children when they need any help or something. So when we talk about neurodivergent, so there are some students who are emotionally very vulnerable, I can say. They are going through a lot at family front, or they are not able to perform, so putting a guilt and planning to do something wrong or something like that. So in that case, peer educators are really helpful to us. So there are ways where we can collaborate with parents. And when the peer educators were selected, actually the parents were also uh, in the loop. So parents are aware that my child is trained in that, and parents are supporting us in many other ways. We are supporting them and they are supporting us. So there is a parent support group which is created inside the school, and the parents are involved in making IEPs and how the child can learn. Sometimes we call the parents, and in our school we practice the shadow teacher. Some children need shadow teacher just to be when we talk about their safety and security, because they need one-on-one attention. So in that case, we allow mothers also as a shadow in our school, because they know how to deal with the child very well. So we provide the guidance, not just referrals to them. And I think it really works. And we involve them in the planning of all the things. And when we feel that it is not working, then we collaboratively go back to the therapist outside and ask for help. So when we are together, the parents feel that, yeah, the school is also on the same ground, same level, and we can work together. So they don't feel, yeah, I am alone, or I have to work alone. So I think this type of system is to be developed in the school, which is very much required.
Thank you so much, Preeti, for also expanding the definition of safe space from children and teachers to even parents and caregivers, because it's so important. And something that you said really stood out to me. You talked about transparency and vulnerability, sharing that vulnerability of the teachers in what they're trying to do. And sometimes it's so important to be open and honest about what the teacher is also
Yes,
struggling with. So that really stood out. And also the fact that you shared that we need to bring empathy and not urgency. And like Tezim, you have responded on chat as well that this does not happen in a day. Sometimes shifts in mindset, in embracing, for that parent, it's the first time ever that they are facing such a scenario. Sometimes, yes, the teacher is able to see because they're continually seeing so many children year after year. So a teacher may be able to perceive certain differences better. But for a family, it's that one child, two children. So that journey of acceptance, and the peer educators or peer mentors, who I'm assuming are other parents as well, so who have gone through the journey. So this is something that really, so thank you for sharing about that. And we are short on time. So before we close for today and we open it up for a lot of questions that the audience might have, I've seen there are lots of questions and reflections. I want to ask all of you, like, what would you say we need to do to make inclusion happen in a classroom, especially when teachers do have competing responsibilities, completion of syllabus, large classroom sizes, all of it. And also there are children who really have a right to be included. So the fact that it's not just giving admission to a child, but also what do you do after you give admission to a child? So this is a question to all panelists, like just your thoughts on inclusion, inclusive education. How do we go from like wanting to be inclusive to actually making inclusion happen? I know capacity building has come up as one of the ways you shared, having systemic structures. But if there is one small thing we can start with, what will that be? Any thoughts?
So I think very briefly, if I have to say only one thing, then I would think that what we need to do is to stop passing the responsibility to someone else, right? I think embracing this idea that inclusion is an inevitability, it is something that we have to work towards and is everyone's right. And that it is my responsibility, irrespective of who I am. So it is my responsibility as much as it is someone else's. So valuing that and seeing where do I situate myself, what can I do, and how do I work with others to make it happen is perhaps most valuable there. And to acknowledge also that there are no templates for inclusion. There is no one way of achieving it. It is a journey and it will be different for different contexts and settings, and we need to figure out working out what works best in our setting and how we can really seek the identify those enabling factors in each of our environments and optimize those and find solutions from there. I mean, that's what I feel. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you. Tazim, Preeti, you have any thoughts on this?
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we covered most of the points, and I agree with Ankur ma'am that if we build a culture of shared responsibility, then only inclusion is possible. And if I talk about the from school perspective, whole school inclusion must be whole school priority, not a individual's priority. And leadership should be actively supportive, like our schools leaders, and model inclusive values in scheduling, resource allocations, and expectations also. At the same time, I think using digital tool to reduce paperwork is also going to help us and allow shared access to the teams, like how the children are progressing and all those things. So keeping a record, because that is very time taking, and people usually feel that it is a burden on them. A workload is increased to them. So if we use digital tools, so not only the parents, even the teachers, even the school, and even the therapist can track where how the child's journey is. So I think that is very much required, that we collaboratively plan something, prioritize that, schedule meetings. And I think this communication is the key. I think we have to start communicating our needs, our understanding and all those things with the people who can collaborate with us and who can work with us.
Thank you so much, Preeti, for sharing that and ways to reduce some of the burden using digital means. Tazim.
I think I agree with what has been said, and what I believe is inclusion is it's not something a checklist or a task that needs to be done. I think inclusion is a journey for everybody, for all schools, for all classrooms, or educators, even for students. And this journey starts with understanding that there will be differences in your classrooms. There will be students who function differently in your classrooms. So first, I think it starts with that understanding that there will be differences in your classrooms. Then it moves on to the second step is recognizing those differences. What are some of the differences that are there in our classrooms? Accepting those differences, and then finally supporting those differences. So maybe if you're not able to support at the moment, because maybe you do not understand what the differences is, maybe we can start with understanding what are the differences, and then maybe reaching out to professionals. It's a lot of collaboration with parents, with the school management, with special educator, with counselor, with the therapist, everybody. I think there's a saying called it takes a village to raise a child. So I believe that is similar in our classrooms as well. So if we understand the differences, recognize the differences in the classrooms, and understand what their needs are, and collaborate with each other and support each other, that will lead for our classrooms and schools to be more inclusive.
Thank you, Tezim. And thank you to all of you for sharing about how we need to shift the narrative from deficit to diversity, that, we all need to think differently. We have all our panelists, you have all talked about building support structures for educators, building capacity of educators, and not just in terms of identifying differences. That is one part of it, but accepting and building classroom practices that support all kinds of learners. You mentioned about UDL being one of the ways. You have talked about it being embedded right at the beginning. And not just that, you've also talked about supporting parents, and not with blame, but with partnership, like parents as partners as well. And another thing that really stood out to me from what all of you have shared today is flexibility within the system and advocating for that, so that learning is not like a race that every child has to be at the same level at the same time, but a journey that each child can take their own way, not being very, very rigid in the structures that we create for all the children. And with that, I would like to open for questions from the audience today. We have a lot of people here and on YouTube watching it live as well. We are open to your questions, and if any of you would like to pose any questions, anything that you want to talk about, any panelists you want to direct your question, do share with us, and any reflections that you have from everything that you have been hearing. So open to all of you to ask any questions or share any reflections that you have from today's session. So I have a first question, and it is directed at all the panelists. So anybody that you feel comfortable answering this question, please do. The person has asked, what do we do if a child has extreme and multiple challenges? As teachers, sometimes we are tied up with rules and regulations to help a special child, as few schools rely on shadow teacher who is befit to know the needs of a child. How can we overcome such an issue and include these kids as well? Yeah, Preeti, do you want to share? Yes, please.
I understand this is a very genuine problem of the teachers when they have children with multiple difficulties, and they have to take care of other children also. And the shadow teacher is not aware of what type of support is to be given and all those things, because there is a lack of training for the shadow teachers also. So in that case, I think school counselors and special educators actually help the shadow teacher and the teacher to understand the basic needs of the child. And once the teacher and the shadow teacher understand, and then they collaboratively work with the counselor and the special educators, they can make a difference in the life of the child. At the same time, sometimes we need expert advice also. So we have to involve parents also in the collaborative meet. What are the issues they are facing, and if it is something related to safety and security of the child, then definitely need of other interventions are also required. Because school has some limits. At school, they are coming for the academic support and to learn how to mingle with, socialize with others and all those things. But if the child is not safe and secure because of the difficulties, in that case, I think collaboratively they have to decide what is in the best interest of the child, and accordingly they have to plan what to do and how to do. But it need a collaboration of all the stakeholders. Hope I answered the question.
Thank you, Preeti, for sharing that. Would any other panelists also want to weigh in on that? Tezim, you have
I think a lot of times what is important is even if like it it should not look like this child is the responsibility of say for example a shadow teacher or a special educator or a counselor, and uh, all the weight is on them, but it should more of be like a collaboration, like Preeti ma'am also shared. I think we can also, if the child has a lot of challenges and needs, I am sure that they will have a therapist or doctor that they are going into, or after school maybe going for services for like occupational therapy or any other therapy. How we can collaborate with those specialists as well, and understand from them the strengths of the child, and also maybe the support needs of the child, and how we can do that in the classroom, and maybe using a universal design for learning is a great tool, and how we use that in classroom helps not only that one specific child, but all the other children as well, maybe who are not able to express their needs in a similar way.
Thank you, Tezim. I have a lot of questions, so I'll just take one more, which is a little different than the others. Um, it says generally many schools suggest vocational training or education for children on the autism spectrum. Why can't schools provide one-on-one academic education at least to those parents who can afford it? Do we need to start thinking about providing one-on-one education to children on the autism spectrum?
I feel when we talk about children with ASD, they have a difficulty with social and communication. They need, and they learn from their peers. Recently, we did one because in our school we do lots of research-based projects, and there we one of the organization in Bangalore actually supported us, and they did research with us. So we studied a group of students with ASD in an inclusive setup, and with a group of students in a individual setting. And we saw that the children in a group setting actually learn more fast and more efficiently than the children who are taught one-on-one thing. So I feel that if the opportunity is given to them to socialize with others, especially the children with autism, they learn how to do the things and how to do that. Regarding vocational training, definitely it requires, because they are very good with patterns and all those things. If they are trained, nowadays the many companies are hiring children with ASD to figure out if there is anything wrong. Especially the banks are focusing on that. So that's why the vocational training is also important. Academic training, they can learn from their peers. I think peers are the great support if it is utilized properly.
Thank you for that very real way of addressing some of the ways in which we can actually talk about inclusion in the classroom setting. The next question that I'm reading from there is, what about academic yearly progress of children with different needs? Should they be promoted to the next class? What does our panel think? Ankur, if I may ask you.
Yeah, see, I think that is exactly where, when we were talking about adaptation, flexibility, systemic support, and all of that comes in, right? I think following the norms rigidly, not allowing any kind of adaptation and flexibility to the system is where this whole challenge lies. So, promoting children because they are part of a certain grade and because there is a system that compels children to be promoted to the next class, setting expectations, one size fits all kind of thing is where the problem lies. So whether it is related to promotion, whether it is related to even assessing children differently or giving tiered kind of assessments or things like that, is where flexibility comes in. And as we've been emphasizing in this webinar, that the system is the one that needs to support. The teacher alone cannot decide that it is okay for this child to be retained in the class this year, because unfortunately that kind of autonomy is not available in our system. I wish it was the case, but it is not like that. That is where the leadership weighs in. That is where parental support is needed. Sometimes it's the parents who want to say that, no, I don't want to retain my child in a grade because, the child will feel, emotionally or socially underprivileged. But that is not, that is where that, what we've been speaking about so much, about establishing trust, collaboratively deciding what is in the best interest of the child rather than being compelled by these processes and systems that are available to all the children. So it's not just about promotion. I think it's about every aspect of the child. So bringing in flexibility at every stage, at every level, in every aspect of the child's school's life, that has to happen. That has to happen. Hence, the collaboration and all of those are important key aspects.
Thank you, Ankur, for raising this very important point that we need to have flexibility within the system. And also, that means even our assessments, what that looks like for children to move from one grade to another, should have that flexibility. Children should be allowed to express themselves, their learning in different ways. And this is a very, very important point, because oftentimes we are stuck in very, very rigid structures, and that often creates this challenge. I see Lindsay has her hand raised. Lindsay, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. My question is, how do we help a slow learning child or a child who is having learning difficulty where the parents itself cannot help as they themselves are not very much educated? They are not even familiar with English language, and they are living in a remote area where they have no access to any special educators, and those parents are putting the responsibility on the teacher, saying that since we do not have anybody else, we do not have any special educators, how do and it is all upon you, we are depending completely upon you, and we are in a place where in a class there might be let's say around 35 to 40 children. So in that structure, how can we help a child who is having this learning difficulty? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So I want to take up this answer, give this answer. In our school, we have such type of students who are first generation learners. There is no support at home. So we have created some sort of programs in our school. One is extended learning program, extended curricular support. So in those classes, actually, and alternate classes are also there, where we are providing them skill building. So we are working on their reading, writing, spellings, comprehension, and all those things. So skill building is focused on that. Or once or twice a week, if the skill building classes are happening with the help of the regular teachers and in presence of special educators and remedial teachers, it really helps. And we are practicing this ECS and alternate programs from 5-6 years. ECS is from 7-8 years, and alternate programs from 5-6 years. And it really helps the children to, because we can identify the learning gaps as early as possible. When the children are not able to hold the pencil or not able to form proper this thing, when they are not able to comprehend, when they are not able to read. So in that case, if these skill building classes are very much required. So as per the timetable, definitely these skill building classes should be planned in the system. And now HPC is there, where we are focusing on the skill building more on rather than completing the portions and all those things. So I think if we follow that, the children will not lag behind. But definitely who are having learning disability, for them, accommodations and exemptions are there, where we can give them some accommodations like extra time or reader support or something like that. And exemption from languages or maths or some other subject is also there. So it is not our this thing. Actually, all the boards provide those provisions and exemptions. So I think we have to go through the policies given by the boards and all those things. And definitely there are ways, and we have to figure out how to help the child.
Thank
So
you.
just may I add
Yeah.
one very small point to that, and because you started with your question by saying where parents are not able to support. I think what needs to be said here is also that parental support need not only be in forms of providing or teaching their children at home. What you need is support in terms of a conviction that and the belief that the child can gain something, whatever that is. It may be an alternative path or whatever, but the fact that the children should, the effort should be to retain the children in the education system, especially when parents themselves have not gone through those experiences. So the conviction and their support is what we need to work on and collaboratively rather than saying that the child should be supported at home. Then it becomes a tennis match that you are not supporting and we have to support. I think we should avoid that. So just wanted to add that. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you so much for bringing in that perspective, Ankur and Preeti, for sharing all those very different ways in which we can look at including the child. And very important, as Ankur said, that we can't be in a tennis match, and especially because the core responsibility, the teacher is the one who has actually gone through the entire B.Ed, M.Ed, everything, all the training in becoming an educator, in becoming a teacher. The parent has a degree because by giving birth to nurturing a child and making sure they're a good human being. So we need to be aware about some of these differences and who is the expert, where is that expertise coming from. I'll take a question from chat and then Beverly, I'll come to you. And I'm clubbing two questions here. So anybody in the panel, if you would like, please let me know. So when kids have enrolled for resource room support, parents usually say that inclusion means not to send them to send them to a resource room. Can you please help here? And a related question is also, since board exams do not have differentiated question papers, how will it help this differentiation? Or maybe I'm guessing also adding to that resource room thing, how does that all come together? Anybody? Yes, Tazim?
Yeah, I think sending a child to a resource room should not be at the cost of their being in the other classrooms. Like if the whole classroom is learning, say for example, English, science, math, or doing arts or something, and the teacher feels that, oh, this child is not learning anything here, send this child to the resource room at the cost of their other academic classes. I don't feel that is inclusion. You are just excluding that child and sending that child to a resource room. And I don't feel that is what should be done. But at the same time, it does not mean that the child should not be sent to the resource room at all or having that support. When we were talking about the role of a special educator or collaboration, I think that is the key understanding. It should not be the responsibility of the resource room. The child should not be the responsibility of the resource room only. How is it that the teacher can also collaborate with people from resource room, the resource people, and take those learnings into their classroom? And at the same time, if after classes or at some before classes or after classes the child needs that support, can go to the resource room. It should not be at the cost of their classes or being with other students in the classroom. And for the second one, where you talked about key concessions in exams, if there are no concessions in exams for a student, that does not mean that the child will not get support in the classroom. Say for example, right now the board exams are in grade 8 and 9th, yeah, 10th, 8th and 10th. I know in new NEP it changes, but till the time the child reaches there, the board exams, can we as a school not prepare the child to the classroom with the support. If we start with no support, how will we expect the child to be to appear in an exam? I know there are concessions, and even if there are students who do not qualify for concessions, who do not have that percentage of disability which gives them access to concessions, it does not mean that they do not get access to the support in the classrooms. If we give them concessions, if we start with giving them concessions and giving support at the same time, and giving them ample opportunity to learn and qualify the exams without support, I think that is what we can achieve.
Can I add on
Yes,
something?
Preeti.
So I think I agree with Tyson ki we don't have to restrain them from their regular classes. I want to say that we don't have to call them to the resource room during their sports or music or library period. They also want to enjoy it. Maybe a person who is very kinesthetic, if we are calling them to resource room, he or she will not be interested in going through that. So what we are doing in our resource room is we are talking to the students in a small group, and we are telling them what we are going to do in resource room. And whenever they are having free time, for example, the teacher is absent or the portions are done and they are doing some leisure activity, and if they are willing, they can come to our resource room. And in a resource room, we are simplifying the content. For example, if a chapter is of 16 or 17 pages, we as educators, special educators, we are simplifying the content into 2 or 3 pages and helping them to develop those skills so that they will not need the simplified paper or anything else. And we are preparing them for the board exam also. If the major pointers are given to them, and I think by the time they reach 9th and 10th, their vocabulary is developed that much, they can write or they can explain. And if the reader support or the writer support is given to them, they can excel, they can clear their exams. And in our school, we are providing that, and it really works. And many students are getting 100 out of 100 also in all the subjects. Not because they are in resource center, they learn how to develop their skills, how to simplify the content, and peer tutoring and collaborative tutoring is also helping them. So one child is becoming a teacher and they are making the notes and then teaching them. So when they become teacher, they gain the emotional support also, confidence also, their personality also develops. So I think we have to make parents understand that resource teaching, if a child is called to the resource room, it is not a punishment, it is a help provided to them. So I think that, again, the communication is very much important. If you want to call a child to the resource room, I think first you have to talk to all the stakeholders, the teachers, because sometimes teachers also say, the child, he or she is a counselor child. So that labeling should not be there. So it should be a collaborative effort where all are at the same ground, and that type of support is to be given.
Thank you so much, Preeti and Tezim, for sharing these perspectives. I'll take the last two questions and we'll coming to a close. Vaibhavi, if you would like to share your question, and then Shreya, and can you both share your questions one after the other, and anybody in the panel can take them up.
Sure. So my question is, if you look at the designing of the boards, like for example, if you look at CBSE, ICSE boards, inherently, I feel they are not quite flexible in terms of the child's, including the child's abilities. And in my opinion, I might be wrong, but in my opinion, I feel the NIOS board is a more flexible board then for the child to feel included. So, is there a possibility of having like a hybrid board model wherein you have the neurodivergent and the neurotypical kids in a classroom, but the way they are taught two different kind of boards, one which is very flexible for the the neurodivergent kids, and one which kind of pushes the neurotypical kids to keep learning? That's one question. And the second question is, where does experiential learning and Waldorf kind of a curriculum stand in all of this? Like, is it more inclusive, and does it provide better option compared to other education boards?
Thank you, Beverly, for your questions. Shreya, can we have your questions as well before we hand it over to the panel? And that will be the last question we are taking for today.
Okay, so I am working as a behavior therapist in an inclusive school setting. And one of the major hurdles that I face as a therapist in such a setting is that a lot of our children fall under the from the spectrum from like moderate to severe. And there are a lot of temper tantrums and meltdowns that happen. And there are only two therapists in the entire school, and both of us handle somewhere around 22 plus children. So it is not possible for us to all like suppose if the child is in the classroom and they are having a meltdown, for example, and the first thing that the teacher does is generally call to us, right? Or ask us to come and see what is happening. But that is not possible because we might be having our one-on-one sessions during that time. And I feel like we do teacher sensitizations, we do teachers workshops for teachers, when the management says that we have to do it. But I somewhere feel like there has been a maybe there is a lack where like teachers are not able to either understand what strategies are being explained to them, or they are like maybe hesitant to implement them. So I want to know if there is maybe some very like a clear cut way to like maybe like like communicate these things to them. Like we do tell them the difference between a meltdown and a tantrum. We do give them strategies how to give the make sure that the child is engaged. We do give differential worksheets also, so that the child stays engaged in the classrooms, like the special educators who are there. But still I feel that there is like a disconnect between the general teachers and the special educator team and the therapists who are working in the school. So I want to know if there are any suggestions from anyone from the panel, like how to, like bridge that gap.
Thank you so much for your questions. I'll leave it to the panel to take up either of the questions and answer anything that you want to address.
I can take Shreya's question. Will that be?
Sure, sure, Tezi.
Yeah, yeah. So, Shreya, what I feel is key. First of all, to for all, it is important for all the teachers to understand what a meltdown is, why there is a meltdown happening at that point of time for any student. And I feel ki it's not only ki for them to know ki, okay, this is a meltdown and this is how we respond at the time of a meltdown. I think it's also important for you to show them what you do. Like if a child is having a meltdown in any teacher's classroom, I think that's a wonderful opportunity for you to take the teacher along and help the child to calm down. Whatever strategies you use, you take them to a sensory room, or you take them to a quiet room, quiet corner, and help the child to calm down, and then have a conversation with the teacher and help them explain ki what happened, what caused the meltdown, and then what you did that helped the child to process that and calm down. And then next time, if uh, similar thing happens, then ask the teacher to take a lead and help the child to process this and calm down. And when I think it really helps for me when I was a part of the fellowship, this thing really helped because initially the teachers were also scared कि this child is having a meltdown. Whatever I do, I don't know if this will add on to the meltdown or if this will make things worse for the child. And they were not sure because we had also done some trainings for the teachers. They were not sure how to implement that. But when we did it together, after that the teachers were very confident in saying कि, okay, now I know how to do this, how to implement what we had learned in the training, and how to support the child during a meltdown or a shutdown. I think that's how I have responded, and that has really worked well for me.
Thank you, Tezim, for sharing that. Any of the panelists, would you like to take a shot at Beverly's questions that were asked. Yes, Preeti.
Can I just add something to my question, please? Okay, so like Tazim said, no, like
Shreya, sorry, because we don't have much time, can you put it on chat and we can move to Beverly's question?
sure, sure, okay.
So, whether we talked about key different boards and CBSE and IGCSE, Cambridge are not that much flexible. And NIS is more flexible. Yeah, definitely. NIS is more flexible because the opportunity is given to the students to give exams in sets and as per their convenience, which is not there. But I think in NEP, the exam patterns are going to change in CBSE board also. So I don't know what is coming up, but I am just predicting the similar type of things which NIS board is for having. Two times board exams will happen, and whatever the child will achieve, in whichever exam the child will achieve the highest marks, that will be considered as a. So I think the things are changing after NEP. Just wait and watch for that. But definitely, I agree with you. NIS board is more flexible, more adapting. But definitely, CBSE and other boards are also giving exemptions and accommodations during the board, 9th and 10th and 11th and 12th. But before that, it is the whole school responsibility. It depends on the school culture, the school ethos, the school management, what they want to give. If you know that the child is having difficulty in language and all those things, we can give accommodations as early as possible. We don't have to wait for 9th and 10th to give those accommodations. We have to teach, or we have to help the child to learn according to the way they want to learn, actually. Second thing, you talked about experiential learning and other things. I think it should be embedded in the UDL and all those things, and it is very much required. And I personally feel the experiential learning actually matters a lot. It helps a lot in developing the basic understanding of the concepts and all those things. So whether it is art-based learning or sports-based learning or experiential learning, we have to actually, when we are making our lesson plans, I think we have to include all those activities in our lesson plans so that it will be easy for all type of learners to understand. And because the children who are tactile or kinesthetic, they learn very well with experiential learning. So I think role plays, drama, all those things should be included in the teaching learning process.
Thank you so much, Preeti.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ankur, would you like to add anything?
Just a very small point on actually 2 points. One is on this last bit about experiential learning, because I think the person who asked the question mentioned Waldorf kind of curriculum. So I just want to say that yes, there are many such alternative kind of curricula available, but you don't have to necessarily, dig into that. I think experiential learning and such good quality learning experiences can be part of any classroom. So you don't have to necessarily say that I have to adopt Montessori or I have to adopt Waldorf or whatever. So you can take a lot of good such kind of learning experiences and integrate them into your daily practice. And I think that is what is extremely important. And the other thing that I want to say in general is that, we are talking a lot about examination and passing examination here, and I understand where those questions are coming from. But what I really want to say is that, we seem to think that, the ultimate success of a child lies in being able to overcome or pass these exams, etc. I think really we need to reflect on ourselves as teachers, as parents, as educators, as people working in this space, that it is not necessarily always, because we are again thinking in that same way where we believe that the only way to determine success is by passing through that one format of examination. And we need to break that mindset. Children succeed in many other ways. passing an exam is only one of them. Their social, emotional, cognitive, every aspect of well-being is equally important, and that is something that teachers, parents, everyone needs to take home. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ankur. That's very something that we all need to take away. Exams are just one way of showing success. There are so many different ways, and success means different things to different children. Like for somebody, it's just tying their shoelaces one day. Whereas for somebody, it is actually reaching the moon and being an astronaut. Not all of us are going to reach the moon, doesn't mean that we are not successful in life. We need to redefine what success means. And thank you all for being here, because I think some of the key takeaways for me are that in all of it, we need to reimagine teacher education itself, because that's at the core of it. We need to understand child development not as a theory, but as a living, breathing part of how teachers understand and engage with children. We need to start thinking about how do we work with teachers where they have the time to observe, reflect, and deliver, and not just deliver content, but actually respond to what is happening in their classrooms. And one of the things that one of our panelists said, like, we need to move away from labels to listening, from reacting to reflecting, and we need to stop fitting children into the system. Rather, we need to reshape systems so that they fit the child. And we don't necessarily mean that inclusion means we are allowing somebody into the classroom, but it's changing those classrooms so that all children can participate, learn, and have a feeling of belongingness that all of you have today stressed on. And finally, I think for me, the takeaway is that children don't need fixing. They need a teacher who could see the way their mind works. They need a classroom where they are celebrated and not shut down. And when that happens for every child, we move closer to building schools where all children are not just accepted, but values, where we are valued and we redefine what success looks like for all children. So, a big, big thank you to all our panelists and to all of you out there who have been engaging throughout today. 1.5 hours, and we have overshot our time by 9 minutes. And still, so many of you are still connected with us. Thank you so much. And I'd like to hand it over back to Sharmishta and Madhusudan to close for today. Thank you all. Thank you to each and every one of you. And a big, big, big thank you to our panelists for enriching
Thank you.
our day.
Thank you, Seema, for facilitating this so wonderfully. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so once again, thank you to all our panel members for this enriching, panel discussion. I hope our participants also had a good time hearing the discussion. And thank you to the participants for investing your time and being there in this wonderful session. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much for giving me opportunity to share my ideas and all those things. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And before we go, maybe I can quickly share my screen. People have been sharing their learnings with all of us. So I'll just try and share that for a minute. Thank you to all who have shared. And we look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you.
I think you can share this with us also.
Yes, definitely. We'll do that. Thank you, everybody, for engaging with us. And thank you, Sharmishta, for having us here today.
Thank you. So we will end the meeting here. Thank you. Take care, everybody.